Hello, everyone. I actually forgot to hit the record button when I began the first introduction to the Isness practices group. So I'm just going to do a little recording of the beginning part where I just talk about sort of um, what my story is, why I'm doing these practices. And the first thing I'll name is that I come from a pretty significant trauma history. And that it took me a long time to get okay. And one of the things that I have learned is that there are easier ways to come into our grounded whole self than I knew when I was younger. Um, had I known some of the practices that I know now, I think it would have been a easier process, a less effortful process, um, and probably reduced some of my suffering pretty significantly. Um, I also have this part of me, that is always playing around this balance between how do I be financially sustainable and also sustainable for my clients. And I know the reality is that my rates for individual sessions are not sustainable for a lot of people. And so my thought process is how do I bring some of this work to people in a way that is accessible and affordable? Um, and so that's why I'm doing these practices. And I hope that they are of service to you. Please, if they are helpful for you, spread the word. I am very passionate about helping people be well and helping people have tools that are um, really simple and profound and useful. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope you come join me to one of the meditation groups. All right, take good care. So I'm always sort of navigating this balance between how do I be financially sustainable and also how do I offer services that are sustainable for people who are trying to do their work. And my individual rates are not sustainable for most people. And so I'm holding, well, how do I offer some of this stuff in a way that is digestible and is financially sustainable for some people? Um, and so that's why today and these mindfulness practices are initiated. Um, so for those of you who have worked with me, the ones that we're going to be doing today, you may or may not have experienced. Um, but each time I do one of these, I plan on doing it one or two meditations, depending upon how long they are. And then we can have a little talk about what's effective, why they're effective, how can it be useful in your own process or working with clients for those of you who are in the healing practices. Um, so we're going to start out. And the first thing I'm going to say is, so I am sitting on, do you guys know what a slipper chair is? So a slipper chair, if you can see it behind me, it's a short chair. It's low to the ground and it has no arms. So you can actually sit cross-legged in it and have back support. So this is a really beautiful way of doing meditation for those of us who are older or have scoliosis or right, that we don't have to worry too much about correct posture, but our bodies are supported so that we can actually do the internal work without having to navigate too much physical discomfort. So we're going to go ahead and just start with a meditation practice. So the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is not think that you're doing meditation, right? Because a lot of times we go into meditation, then we have an efforting part that's like, I'm going to do meditation. And we don't really have to do that, right? So all we're going to do is just kind of like be with what is. And then maybe I'll guide you for some different possibilities of ways of experience or approaching this particular moment, right? So we're not trying to get anywhere, we're just experimenting, right? So let's go ahead and either close your eyes or lower your gaze. And we're just going to start with breath. So we're not doing any pranayama. We're not focusing on breath or rhythm of breath or how many seconds you're breathing in or out. We're just noticing breath. And so we don't want to really put any effort into the breathing process. We're just becoming aware of breath. You can think about breathing yourself bigger. Another cue might be to allow your lungs to get all the air you need. Allowing your body to breathe you. Just staying present with that breath. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Just aware of your beautiful breath that supports you every day without any effort from you. Now become aware of the you that is aware of you breathing. The awareness you. And if I asked you to become aware of your body, sort of the energetic quality of your body, most people, generally speaking, are more aware of the front of their body. Unless there's a place that's painful, but generally speaking, it's face, neck, chest, front of arms. Now, the invitation is that even though you're vertical, imagine that energetically you are horizontal. And the energy that is in the front of your body begins to pool in the back of your body. Inviting that energy into the back of your head, the back of your neck. You can even, on the back of your neck, right at the middle point of the back of your neck, invite the back of your neck to surrender backwards. And almost reach back just a micro bit with the back of the neck. And what you'll notice is the chin begins to drop without closing off the front of the neck. And again, the awareness into the entire back body, the shoulders, the back, the lower back. That the initiation of our engagement with the world begins with the back body. And then becoming aware of breath again, but from a back supported orientation. And what you may notice is that as much as we pour our energy into the back body, there's still some energy in the front body. And so we can then begin to orient to the entire circumference of our being. So we are a whole being rooted in the back body. And then in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and engage with others. And notice what happens. I just gave the cue that we're going to open our eyes and engage with others. Did your energy shift more into your front body? And if it did, root back into the back body. And then as we do begin to open our eyes and come back to the screen, go ahead and look at others in this group, but orient from the looking coming from the back body, the engagement coming from the back body. And just notice how that is. And notice how you feel now from when you first began. And this is our time that we get to be in community and share. So people can just pop on, name what your experience was. And that means if it felt like it was helpful or not helpful, anything goes.
I can break the silence.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. Nice to meet you all. For me, I was really glad at the end when you gave the cue as to like notice if it's shifted back into the front body, because I 100% had, and like was actually surprised by being able to get more of that energy back into the back body before opening my eyes again. Normally, like once I've been triggered in a state like that, I stay in that state. So not sure if that's something that'll repeatedly happen, but it was cool to see on my end.
Well, it's, practice, right? Would others be willing to share?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I really enjoyed the little bit about being aware of the self being aware. I really felt like it kind of pulled me backwards and upwards and helped expand my consciousness. And I felt a very warm feeling spread throughout my body, knowing that I was held by something greater.
Thank you, Claire. Glad you're here. Go ahead, Robin, you can just unmute.
Oh, I am on. Okay. I noticed I like this a lot. I've been using it on my own a lot and find it really invaluable. What I noticed this time was interesting was just the experience of opening my eyes, and I'm aware of how much more I'm on the East Coast, so it's a little late my time, but I'm aware of kind of how much more present I feel, and kind of the upright, my posture just feels different. So I feel much more grounded and present in here than I did 10 minutes ago. So, yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks for telling. Others?
I feel more grounded and settled
in myself. And for me, it felt like my parts relaxed. There's a lot of things that have been going on recently, and yeah, I mean, there's just a spaciousness, but there's a relaxation and just a settling. I feel more embodied.
Yeah, for me, there's a part of me that is usually in a low-level freak out. And when I focus inward, it freaks out some more. There's more anxiety, more fear, more agitation. And it's hard for me I often think, because it's happening in my chest, to notice my breathing. I'm really noticing that feeling more than I'm noticing my breath. And then I kind of got that, and I was able to shift a little bit, sort of separate from that feeling a little bit, and put my attention more on my actual breathing. And that felt a little more opening, and it felt good to focus on the back part of me. I don't know how to describe the feeling, but I'll leave that for later. When you said to begin to open our eyes and notice, I noticed that I didn't shift all the way to the front. It was mostly my face that I became aware of as sort of like that was where I went to the front. And then it was good to go back. And looking at people, I think I had trouble staying in touch with the back.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that was about my
That
experience.
That is super common. I mean, part of what happens is because we are social creatures, right? We engage with the world with this. And so energetically, this is more dominant. But there's also this sort of like, if we're too front focused, there's a sort of unrecognized kind of toppling energy,
Mm.
right? Because we're not rooted in our back body.
Mm.
Right. And so that sort of natural domination is also the thing that can unsettle us. And so these practices of open your eyes, or just notice when I just say you're going to open your eyes, what happens, right? What we're playing around with is with oscillating our attention, right? Which is, for those of us who are in the therapeutic world, that is a primary practice that we do as we're sitting with clients, as we're noticing our client's experience, we're noticing our experience, right? Particularly for a somatic therapist, we know that if something is arising in my body, if I'm getting anxious while I'm talking to a client, I need to check in, see, is that my anxiety, something that's being transmitted to me, right? And so we have this practice of oscillating attention, and that we can do that oscillating attention in our own inner experience, right? To notice if I'm feeling ungrounded, if I'm in a relationship with someone, if I'm in a conversation and I'm feeling a little ungrounded, where is my energy? And oftentimes just pulling our energy back into our back body will help us ground, right? And because we are grounded, or in more self energy and IFS language, our parts feel safer. Right? And so part of the reason why I am teaching some of these practices, like there's like that practice was, I don't know, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, right? That there are some really simple, short tools that we can use to reestablish our grounding when we are challenged, or when our parts are beginning to take over, or when we're just doing life, when we're on the list of too many things to do, and now I'm doing dishes, and now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this, and all of a sudden I'm like, all frazzled because I'm in a doing part. And if I just remember to come back into my back body, oftentimes that intensity begins to slow down. Any others want to share?
For me, it was interesting because, as Claire was saying, I like that open awareness.
Mhm.
And I practice that often, but sometimes it feels like I'm just floating away.
Mhm.
So that coming back into the back body grounded that whole process, including that open awareness part. So it's just a nice kind of coming back.
Mhm. There is just, this in IFS, Dick talks about sort of our kind of self as having two energies, a particle and wave. And the wave is the sort of isness, that spaciousness, and the particle is the sort of our beingness, right? Our the placeness that does navigate life, but from an expansive place. Okay. And so that is, I think, one of the ways. So I live in Boulder, and I have a fair amount of clients that do a lot of the spiritual woo. And so part of the practice for them is, how do you get back into your body? Because the self and the particle component and how we're living our lives lives in the body, right? Self is an embodied being in this incarnation. Others.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I have been having so much fun, but I am exhausted. And so, like, searching for rest, like I did a meditation backpacking trip and I came home feeling exhausted. So this was the comfort I was looking for, that feeling of being in my own system, in my own isness. So that was really powerful. But I was curious if anyone else, I noticed that when we went to go meta, I was already meta, and I found like, oh, I need to start and live more. I think I live too meta. And so coming in and being in that embodiment, and the first thing we talked about. So.
It's very much like, when we talk in Buddhism, we talk about the middle way, right? The middle path, right? And so that is where that oscillation of attention resides, right? That the reality is that we're never exactly in the middle, right? And that being in the middle or finding balance is often about moving between these extreme states. Right. If anybody of you have done yoga, you know that when you first start doing yoga and you go into tree pose, you're super topply, right? Super awkward, right? And then as you do it more, you can hold that pose for a while. But if we looked and we put electrodes on your body, what we would find is that your body and those micro muscles are constantly moving to try and keep that balance. So balance is never static. And so this practice of oscillating attention between front and back, right? Between meta and micro, between body and spaciousness, right? Is really a good practice for how do we live a good life where we are here and present, but we are able to connect to the divine, and here and present and divine. And where is that place in between these two where we don't have to separate them so much? Right, where we become the yoga practice where we can hold the pose, and so we're not living in as much of these extreme states. Right. Any other comments?
I could comment. For me, I got like, oh, this is trippy when you said like, now observe the observer that is observing, and I was like, oh, I hadn't even thought. I know, I was like, good God, I hadn't even thought of that. I was like, oh, now I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole. So for a second, it took me a second to then just like let go of that. I guess it was like maybe a judgment part, like, oh, there's someone, and I'm like, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And then when I was guided back to like, feel back into like the back, I forgot about the self and like I kind of felt like it was like the mirror, like exponentially. And it was really interesting also to feel the back that I just hadn't done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a second also to really like, okay, just stop, and allow yourself. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Right. It's one of those things that I find like it's super simple. It's a really simple practice, and it's really effective. And so that's part of my intention here, is to like show some like, here's all the things that I've learned that are super effective and really simple, right? So that when we, not only do we get to feel better, but then when we are doing our internal work, right? That a lot of times, especially for those who are working within the IFS model, right? We're trying to do our work, and like it gets really scrambly because we start realizing that we've got whole constellations of systems, right? And if we're doing it from a trying to figure it out part, it gets super confusing. But if we can sit back and just go, oh, that's there, that's there, that's there, right? Then we can do it with breath, right? And that practice of sort of noticing the you that is observing, right? What we're looking at is like, a lot of mindfulness practices are about the sort of observing self. And we don't recognize that sometimes that's a part that's observing, right? And that what I think about when I am in my grounded self, when I'm in my isness, when I'm in my spaciousness, it's effortless. I am just here, right? And then I have all these sort of practice parts that like to effort around doing practice, right? And so I become very attuned to who is doing this practice right now, right? And that is a really great, I have all these sort of little mantras, like, or in Spanish we call them dichos, right? I think in English they're called adages, right? Those little phrases that we use to remind us of our larger concept. Like, in Buddhism we say, not my circus, not my monkeys, right? Which is the reminder of somebody's crazy, doesn't have to be my crazy, right? And so, one of the adages that I often hold is, to be in the middle of something and just ask myself, who is the me who is doing this thing? Who is the me who is washing dishes? Who is the me who is leading the meditation? Who is the me who is doing the gardening? Right? And oftentimes I will find that it's a part of me doing these things, which is not wrong. Most of us, we have very effective parts. But if I can go, okay, I have a dishes washing part, which is really the part of me. It's like getting tasks done, right? Now I'm doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? And if I can just notice that for a minute, like, oh, that tasking part is here. Come into my back body and then just invite my back body or grounded self to be present as well. Then I can do the dishes in a more enjoyable way and a less stressful way. Right? So there's all these sort of really simple little sort of tricks and tools for living life a lot more simply, a lot more easy, without having to effort so much in our evolutionary process. Right? Any other comments? Going, and gone. All right. So we're going to do another one. But before we do that, and this is often sometimes helpful because now we're kind of relaxed. Now we're kind of like, so we're going to do a little practice to sort of escalate a little bit, right? So we can feel the difference of what it feels like to be escalated and to do this practice. But I also think it's super helpful to, when we do these escalation practices, and escalation practices, I'm meaning like getting a little out of yourself, right? Is to remember that if we can escalate ourselves, we can de-escalate ourselves. If just by the invitation of escalation, we can activate ourselves and up a point or two, that means that we also have the power to downregulate, right? And it's the sort of mixture between, yes, these mindfulness and spiritual and IFS parts, and also that cognitive piece around our thoughts and our body positioning can dictate what kind of state we're in, right? Or in Buddhism, we call these cliches, right? These ways that we get caught up in the same kind of cycle of thinking or the same kind of suffering, right? So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to lead you through the second practice today. And by the way, as I named, I am recording this. These will be available. We're going to throw them on, we're going to throw this one on YouTube as the sort of introduction for this course. So they will be available for you to review. Okay. So let us come back into whatever our comfy position is. Okay. And the invitation is to bring something to mind about which you have some kind of tension. It doesn't have to be the most difficult thing in your life, right? A little conflict, a little unsettled, a thing you don't like about yourself, whatever, right? Some sort of discomfort. And as happens, as our discomfort mind does, we have a tendency to chew on that thing, right? We feed the demon, so to speak, right? So I'm going to invite you to feed it, right? Allow yourself to think about it. Allow yourself to, if there's a conflict, do what we normally do when we're not being conscious, is we make up the arguments in our head as if they're happening, right? Or if there is an anxiety, allow it, give it a minute to just do its thing. An area that we know that we have been working on and sort of is a little persistent. We can invite that in. Not trying to be mindful, just allowing it to do its thing. And notice what happens in your body if you're able to be in that space. What happens to your back body? What happens to your breath? You know, what happens to the sense of usness that we just had as we were speaking? So just notice that even within a minute, we can usually cause some kind of distress or some kind of less joyousness. And so letting that go. And take a moment just to come back into your back body for a moment. And then I'm going to invite you to imagine a mountain range. Notice the top of the range, where the mountains may be curvy or jagged. You can notice the texture, the roundedness, the flatness. You can notice where shading exists and where sun exists. Notice how long this mountain range is. And allow yourself to zoom in to this mountain range. So as you zoom in, you might notice trees and rocks. And you can zoom in even further. And notice what you notice as you zoom in. You might notice soil or pine needles or leaves. Perhaps some flowers. You might notice wind and the root of trees. And you can play with zooming out and zooming in. Until you find a place on this mountain that feels like your place. Notice the solidness of the mountain beneath you. Notice the trees nearby. And then notice the breeze moving between the trees and the leaves. And the invitation is to now be the breeze that moves between the leaves and the trees. That moves in and out. And feel what it's like to be the breeze. When you've had enough of breathing, you can be the tree. So let the tree be inside you as you feel your roots into this mountain, drawing up the energy of the earth and reaching and lifting towards the sun. Feel what it's like to reach out, to have your leaves be affected by breeze. And when you're full of your experience of treeness, invite the mountain inside you. Be the mountain. Feel the solidity of eons. the solidness and restfulness of staying put. Of being the solid. As we begin to make our way back, not quite yet, see if it's possible to bring some of that mountain with you. Some of that tree with you. Some of that breeze with you. And then when you're ready, coming back to our space together. Would anybody like to speak to their experience? Should offer treats for the first person who speaks.
I'll go.
Thank you, Lou.
My name is Lou, by the way, and I do work with Sabrina, so we know each other. So that was very grounding for me. The best part was being the tree. I really felt my roots as the tree, my trunk, my branches, the leaves, and bringing the mountain in was a little less clear, but I felt it. And what it put me in touch with was an experience I had a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago, of a me being that arose in me that was completely free of any shame or fear or doubt, and what just was, and didn't have to do anything to be, just was, and it felt so good. It felt like the tree and the mountain, but a little bit more like the tree, and the mountain was kind of like some part of that's where my me being was coming from. My me tree being was coming from the mountain. Anyway, it felt I feel more open and relaxed, and I was able to bring a little piece of that experience with me. So I have a little taste of it right now.
Glad, Lou. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Others like to share their experience.
I can share. I really enjoyed that. And it was interesting because as we started, being guided towards this mountain, I was like, oh, this is from EMDR, my calm place. But in it, there are no trees because this is in Peru in the mountains where it's very barren and it's, so it took me a second, and then again the voice of like, oh no, but there are no trees, now you're putting a tree in it, and like a little mini dialogue. It's like, stop. And then I was able to just find a tree, and it was fine. And I really also had to pause when the invitation was to bring the mountain in, you know, inside. That also took me a second. I was like, oh, I don't know if like how that would be. It's like, it's so big and it's so vast. But then it took me a second, but then that was also really nice to, and very grounding and very like, wow. And I believe you said like you gave us an option to like look and expand the view. So to bring that inside seemed like, wow, that would be really hard. That's like too much. But in fact, it wasn't. It was really lovely. I really enjoyed that. And again, I love the going in and out. And that really worked for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any others?
I'd like to share.
Thank you, Claire.
So I noticed that this meditation reminds me of when I would go on nature walks, or just when I'm outside. I'm the type of person to notice like an insect or like a baby leaf or something, where I'm like, wow, let me just pause and be present with this thing. And that kind of practice in my everyday life has really helped. That like quality of presence has really helped me be in my body more. And this meditation almost replicated that experience of being out in the world, and almost like kind of like a microscope, kind of focusing in on something and allowing it, just simply observing it and allowing it to be, but that thing being ourselves. So I really felt this meditation was super powerful. And I feel really good. I feel like I'm just like an ambling stream in the forest. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can share. I've had a bit of a different experience than everyone else here. I was not, I think, like kind of ramping things up ahead of time definitely made me come in and just like already not feel as present or as grounded as we were previously. And pretty much immediately, as I was thinking about like the mountain range that I had in mind, which is the one I look at like almost every single day outside of my house, and like there were all these other like prompts after it encouraging me to think about other things, I started efforting like really fast and really hard. And then like came back to my back body actually from the previous exercising and started kind of thinking like, what is actually going on here? And I had this part of me inside that was just like really fucking angry, honestly, that I was being told like to do something that I didn't want to do. And I spent the rest of the session tending to that part, and there was some trees and mountains involved at times, but it was I was in a different place for sure. But I really like working with that, like ramping up the intensity prior to doing the work, I thought was helpful in a different way that I wasn't expecting.
Well, and especially when we're doing practices, right? That understanding that we can easily ramp up and easily, right, come down. And I love that, I had a pastor once said that, chew the meat and spit out the bones, right? If something doesn't work for you, then, spit it out and do what does. And so lovely that you were able to go, I'm actually in an efforting part. I can just do what I know works, right? And start from there. And, in our mindfulness practices, sometimes they take us into nice, joyous, peaceful places. And sometimes it's like, oh, there's a part. So awesome. Part of what I love about this practice is this particular one is really about, when I look at everything that I do, that everything that I work with really can be distilled down into disconnection, right? We're disconnected from ourselves, from our hearts, from the divine, from the planet, from each other. And so everything is really about how do we get back into connectivity, right? And so for this one, it's very much about how do we get back connected to nature, that we are part of nature. We go out into nature and being our little egocentric humans, we're like, I'm in nature. rather than I am nature. Right? There's me, there's the tree, there's the bunny, and there's the leaves, and it's all part of this oneness, right? And so if the breeze and the tree, and if that is too ungrounding, then to be able to sort of sit with the back against the tree, which is an actual practice I give people when, like in the real world, right, is to lean against the tree and see if you can feel the energy of the tree. And then lay on the ground, and you will feel that there is a different energy on the ground, right? And that being in relationship is part of what we need in order to stabilize, because we are we are not stable as a like as a people, right? We're a red hot mess. And part of how we need to do that is to get back to the grounding of the great Mother Earth, right? And to remember who we are in our placement of all things. Right? Others.
I had some similar, I was less grounded with this one. The tree helped. With the tree, there was a stability and a groundedness for a little while. But the mountain range that came to me is the one that I was with yesterday when I was it was a virtual celebration of life of one of my teachers and mentors. And I realized when we did that first exercise, it's really easy for me to go up and out. And so going to the mountain range, I went up and out. And yeah, but I felt sort of grounded with the tree. And then I think that's what it felt like. I sort of had a little bit of the grounding, but then I was out there with the wind and everything else. So,
and that is, I think, part of us to know is what is our proclivities, right? What are the areas that we get lost and ungrounded? Like, is being in the breeze a spacious thing, or do I lose, like, do I get lost in that? Right? Do I enter into spaciousness, or do I enter into lostness? Right? And so part of these practices are learning what are the ones that actually are rooting me, right? Because it's not going to be the same for everyone, right? And finding like, oh, there's this meditation practice, and this is sort of this thing. I can use these parts of it, but the rest, that's for another year or maybe never. Okay. Any others?
Sabrina,
Yes, Bruce.
good evening. Hi, everybody. I like this one. I live in Santa Fe. I'm at 7,000 feet, and I'm looking at the Rocky Mountains across one window and the Sandy Christie Mountains behind me. So it's all good. So that's the easy one for me. The breeze was great. Well, first, my favorite spot when I'm climbing is always tree line, because you do all that work to get to that point, and then all of a sudden you're above the tree line. So anyway, I was hanging at the tree line, and then when we did the breeze one, the thing for me, there were two things that were great, because getting to the top of the ridge line is always so much work. And so I immediately just shot to the very top of the mountain and went over the peak. So that was really fun. Anyway, but the other thing, somatically, like all of the locations in my body where the parts like to hang, like when I did the transference into the breeze, like I literally heard them hitting the ground as I took off. So that was kind of cool. I've not done that before, so that was really fun. So then the tree, I got a little stuck because I've been doing these meditations where just coincidentally, the trees are these portals into the earth. So it was this giant redwood with, I was like, dude, I'm not going into the portal right now. I'll get lost. I'm not going to do that this time. So anyway, so the tree was okay. And then I took a stop. There was a lake and a stream. So I kind of aborted for a little while because I like water. And then the mountain, I was kind of familiar with that, just, the John Kabat-Zinn stuff and all those kind of things. So really enjoy that. Although I got a little bit lost in Lord of the Rings with the Mines of Moria, that was a quick detour for me. But anyway, we grounded. But I just, the weight of it and being present and everything else is passing. So it's very nice. Great way to end. And a little bit looking to get back into the breeze, though. The mountain felt a little heavy, but very sturdy. So anyway, so thank you.
Awesome. We're close to time. I said, I don't know if you noticed, I put 6 to 7-ish because I can't commit to being that rigid because this work doesn't feel like I want to be rigid with it. Claire's actually going to say a few things while I take a quick bathroom break, and then I'll come right back.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. So yeah, this was a free session. If you feel compelled in your heart to send Sabrina a little donation, there's her Zelle information's here. Also, the next group will be on September 11th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and you can join using the or if you're a first timer, you can join using the first free code. And then the following groups will be $30. And the groups will be held on the second Monday at 1 p.m. and then the fourth Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And then there's this feedback survey. We would really love if you felt called. It's super fast, just take a minute. There's a feedback survey here. The link is it's the first link here at the top. It's a Google form. And we'd really appreciate if you could fill that out for the purpose of assisting future clients that Sabrina might work with. So thank you so much for being here. And it was great to meditate with all of you.
Did I make perfect timing?
Yes.
All right. I really appreciate each of you for showing up here. This is the work that I love to do, and I'm super grateful that you are willing to come up and be recorded and show your faces. And some of you I will see soon, some of you I hope to see soon, and much love to you all.